Welcome back, everyone, to the Profluence podcast, and Happy New Year. It's been a few weeks, so typically 2 a week, and we took 3 weeks off, but kicking it off strong. We got Steve Kuhn from SportsPredict, who you may know from Major League Pickleball, and a bunch of other cool things here today. So it should be a fun one. So, Steve, appreciate you coming on, and excited for this conversation to hear more about what you're building next.
Well, thank you. Pleasure to be here, and I've been a fan of your pod. I know you had a really amazing year last year, and I had a chance to listen to a number of your episodes, and happy to be here.
Appreciate it. So let's start here, and then we'll lead into SportsPredict. It's and I don't know the year, but let's call it a little bit after COVID. You're in different spaces, right? You're not in sports. Maybe, you do some things, or you go to some games or play some sports, whatever. But, and obviously this started in pickleball, but what was the opportunity you saw? What excited you about sports? What made you push all the chips in, to be like, hey, sports is a great asset class to go build in. I'm going to put personal capital. I'm going to put time, effort, everything into the space. But what was that you saw? And obviously it touch pickleball side, but touch the sports side as well as a whole.
What I say to people is sports is the one thing that really still draws us together. We're seeing more and more forces, whether that's political fights, whether that's technology, whether that's social media. It seems to be kind of ripping the world apart. And that's both true in America, but not just in America. I think that's true worldwide. The one thing that kind of still brings people together is sports. It's the one, if you look at, I think, of the top 100 shows in the United States that were watched most live, I think something like 98 of them were sports. Yeah, mostly NFL. It's the one thing that we all watch still together at the same time. It's not on Netflix that we're all watching at different times. We're all watching the same thing. And then obviously there's events like the NFL, which are huge in America, but we have an event coming this year, the World Cup, which the finals might be watched by more than 1 billion people. And these are the things that, whether you're in a small town in America or you're traveling around the world, if you can know a little bit about sports, especially know about the kind of the local sports and what's interesting to the people there, it's immediately a way for you to connect. And I think if anything, as we see the growth of social media, as we see the growth of AI, I think a lot of people are feeling like their humanity is getting shrunken a little bit. That might be a little meta, but I think we're all a little bit challenged by that. We feel maybe a little bit less human than we did. By the way, I love AI and I use it, but nonetheless, I have these concerns. What's something, again, that brings us back, makes us feel human, makes us feel tribal in some sense, brings us back to our core? It's really sports. And so I really wanted to do something in that space because I see it as growth for continuing for years and years and years. We've already seen it. Look at the value of sports teams over the last several decades. I don't care almost basically what sport it is, they've gone up. So I'm certainly not the only person who sees this. The number of sports-related investment funds has gone up. People are really seeing more venture capital. We're seeing more institutional investors. We're seeing Middle East investors. Kind of everyone is seeing this. And to me, this trend, while people do recognize it, is still undervalued. And that was certainly true in pickleball. In pickleball, this was a sport that I started playing about 10 years ago. I loved playing it. I noticed not only my love for it, but the passion level of the people involved were so high. It was almost like a religion to them. I predicted, going back to the theme of SportsPredict, I predicted that this sport would someday be the most played sport in America. I think by almost all measures that is already true. And I think soon, certainly by 2032, and I'm starting to think maybe even sooner than that, this will be the most played sport in the world, taking down soccer. Soccer is right now, it's about 300 million people in the world. I think pickleball will surpass that sometime between now and 2032. That's just a very powerful trend. And if you can find a way to be a part of that, it's usually not only something that's joyful for myself personally, being a part of that pickleball growth, something I think is actually not only good for me, but good for the world because it makes people happier. But also it's an amazing investment opportunity. And then we'll talk about how I'm now thinking about another way to interact with sports, with SportsPredict, a free-to-play, non-gambling way to build status and prove you're a great sports predictor that I can even scale even bigger than pickleball. So excited about, so to your point, sports is a very important part of culture. In fact, only growing in my view.
Yeah, and I like the sense around human connection that you talked about. We definitely feel that. I feel it more than ever. I mean, it's like it's a joke, but it's also the truth of we go from we wake up and we look at our phone and then we go to our computer, and then to relax and get away from everything at night, we go to our TV. And it's like, you got to mix it up in sports. And we're seeing these, fitness clubs and run clubs and wellness centers, and you're seeing it all sort of separate with like AI and then like sports or
Yeah.
experiential, which is a big thing. And then, I mean, even tonight I went and I was playing tennis. I'm of the few people that still play that, and the 8 other courts are packed with pickleball, right? Packed. And it's really really cool to see. Now I'm curious. I mean, we could go, and I'll say we could go into pickleball. We could go into building a league. I think it's interesting. I
Yeah.
think you'd have an awesome perspective. Maybe we do that some other time. But for people listening, go listen to the Brooks Wiley podcast we did. We go deep there, and so if you really want to hear more about that, go listen to that. But so, Steve, you mentioned Middle East money coming in, and just in general venture and PE. What You're in Asia right now. What do you see there in sports? Like, how's that ecosystem viewing it, from fans to athletes to investors? Like, what are you seeing on the ground there? Because we don't have too many Asian, people on the ground in Asia giving us insights on the podcast. So I think that'd be super interesting.
Yeah, well, sports only continues to grow here. I'm based currently in the Philippines. One thing, famously, traffic is a challenge sometimes in Manila. The one time you'll notice when the traffic absolutely goes away and you can travel anywhere in Manila is if Manny Pacquiao is fighting. Basically the whole country stops. It's almost like a national holiday. That is something that really brings an entire country, over 100 million people together. There's nothing like sports like that. And we're seeing that in various sports in Asia. But again, going back to pickleball, it is really absolutely blowing up in Asia. It happened probably first in Vietnam and in Malaysia. The growth there has been incredible. But now it's really hitting the Philippines. Historically, the most played sports in the Philippines have been basketball and volleyball, but I think very quickly pickleball is growing, and it's accessible to, as we all know, to a wider group of people, greater range of ages, fitness levels, etc. It's easy to play, it's inexpensive to build, and we're just seeing that grow. So here's a fun stat, and by the way, I lose hours doing this. Is I go to something called Google Trends. You can go on Google Trends and put in a certain word, and you can search for different countries and see how much that search term has grown in interest over the last year, 5 years, etc. The word pickleball in the Philippines has grown by 15 times in searches. So it's 15 times more searched today than 1 year ago. And that has been an amazing leading indicator for the sport. When you see that, that means that people are starting to build courts, starting to build clubs. And we've gone from 20 pickleball clubs in the Philippines to over 300 in the last year. So this sport is really bringing people together here. We're seeing that all over Asia. This is why the prediction that pickleball will be the most played sport in the world seems to people here. This is not a controversial prediction. And I also, on the sideline of that correlation or that prediction is that I think soon there'll be more pickleball players in Asia than there is in North America. That will cross. That will probably happen in the next few years. So being here, being on the ground, you see the power of sports in the Philippines, whether it's a Manny Pacquiao fight, and now you're seeing it in pickleball. We've seen it in Vietnam and Malaysia. China is getting closer and closer to pickleball and getting more interest every day. Another thing that could really do another level of launch, especially in Asia, is if pickleball does get accepted in the Olympics at some point, like 2032. The rivalries in Asia will get even more intense around the Olympics.
Yeah, the pickleball courts, even in Florida tonight, a lot of Asian descent people playing, which was cool. So I just showed up, and I played tennis tonight, but some of the guys I see, like Bruce, he always says, you play ping pong, or like what else, you play tennis. And so, but to your point, like table tennis is huge, obviously in Asia, and so it seems like pickleball, it makes sense that it will stick. Like yeah, I mean, I see why it would be huge.
Here's a number that's out there for you. There are 250 million people in China that play badminton. Yeah, so that's the kind of numbers that are possible for pickleball in China and in Asia. We're also seeing massive growth in India. So you got two countries with about 1.4 billion people each, where we're seeing massive growth. So that's why the prediction that Asia will the place where more players are is actually, once you're here, is not a very bold prediction. That seems pretty obvious to everyone out here.
Yeah, no, it's super super cool. So I want to go here, and then I think it will start to lead us into SportsPredict. While you were building the pickleball league, you and correct me anywhere if I'm wrong, but I know you guys started to try to bolt some other stuff on, whether that was you personally or however you guys structured it, about like a duper and some other technologies, and you used the actual league, the IP, as sort of the base layer, and then you started to try to put other stuff around it. Just curious, like how you think about that, how you think about sports technology as a whole, how you think about different, like sports as a wedge, right? Because we can say, hey, Pacquiao, which is like boxing, brings us together, pickleball brings us together, it's more participation, right? Or whatever it is. How do you think about then the technologies and just even the peripheral, whether it's apparel, whether it's pickleball paddles, whatever it is, right?
Yep.
Having seen it from a league standpoint.
So I grew up as a kid. I was a chess player. I started playing when I was about 6 years old, and I can remember and tell you my chess rating basically every month of my life. When you have a rating, it makes you care about what you're doing more. It gives you a way to measure it. It gives you a way to track it. It gives you accomplishment. It gives you goals. In chess rating, when you're a 1200 player, you want to be a 1300 player. When you're a 1500, you want to be a 1600. There's always something there for you to accomplish, and a way for you to measure success, a way for you, if you achieve certain levels, if you become a 2000 player, which is at kind of an expert level, or you hit 2200 or 2400, you're entering the realm of a grandmaster. You can earn incredible, real status from that. And people just love having a rating and having a way to measure themselves. And that's what it was that understanding of my need and my desire and my having a rating in chess that really helped me think about working with Brooks and others to create Duper. And because once you have a rating, not only does it make the sport more fun because you can find players at your level in a more easy way, and it's more fun to play with players around your level, but it gives you a way to measure your success. You'll know if that coach that you hired, you're paying for lessons, are they actually helping you or not? there's a way to measure that. And what we're bringing to in SportsPredict is exactly that. We're bringing it to the world of who's good at actually predicting sports. So we give you a rating. We call it the SMART rating, which stands for Sports Markets Accuracy Rating. You're smart. And you can determine whether are you a better predictor of the NFL than your friends, than the world, than your brother or sister, than your fraternity mates. We give you a way to have a rating for that. And that to me is something that's amazing. Yeah, we've seen the incredible rise of sports gambling since the Supreme Court case that kind of opened it up in the United States. And we've seen companies like the big dogs, FanDuel and DraftKings, really gain a lot of market share, and it feels like their advertising is everywhere. But it does leave a lot of people out. It leaves people out who are under 21. You're not supposed to. That's where it's not legal. People who have ethical or religious concerns with gambling, and just a lot of people. They love sports. They love to show their friends that they know more about sports than they do, or show the world that. But they don't want to gamble, and so when we talk about we're going to talk VC speak here, the total addressable market. The total addressable market of gambling is big. A lot of people gamble, but the total addressable market of a platform where you can prove your status as a great predictor, I think is 4 to 5 times bigger than that. We say that there's 4 billion people in the world who talk about sports and make predictions and want to show that they're the most knowledgeable. And our goal is to convert as many of those as possible to being on our platform. I'll talk about a couple other models that we see in the world that have been successful in creating a free-to-play platform without prize money, just status, that have been incredibly successful. So we know that can be true. Our goal is to convert at least 25% of those 4 billion people to being players on SportsPredict, in which case we'd be the first game in the world to have over 1 billion people playing it. That's we don't lack ambition, and that's our goal for what we want to do in the next few years with SportsPredict.com.
Yeah, why don't you? I'm curious to hear about the other ones while that's hot and it's on the top of people's heads. After you just said that, and then we'll get to the next part.
Well, the most obvious example is one that has affected me is chess.com. So 600 million people in the world play chess, and 40% of them, 240 million people, have accounts on chess.com. And it's why is that? First of all, they got a great name. Chess.com was the smart name to grab. It's free to play. It's easy to download. You don't need super great, perfect bandwidth to be able to play. It transcends cultures. The chessboard looks the same no matter what language you speak. It has a tremendous number of advantages, but I say to people, there's no have 240 million members if they didn't have a rating system. The rating system is really the hook, because I'm always trying to get my rating higher, and I'm always trying to learn and take lessons. That's what really drives people. And We don't really have anything like that in sports. You don't get a rating system. You don't prove you're the best predictor in the world on DraftKings or FanDuel for obvious reasons. There's financial reasons. If you're losing, you probably don't want people to know that, or you might be embarrassed. It might be financially something that's the thing you don't want to talk about. But if you're winning, maybe you don't want the IRS to know. Either way, there's reasons why you probably don't want the world to know how you're doing on sports gambling. And therefore, people who say that they're great sports gamblers, they can't really prove it. There's no audited track record. There's no way to really demonstrate that you are the most knowledgeable person about predicting the NBA or Major League Baseball or NFL. There's no way for you to show that. That's what we're changing. And I think what we see in chess.com is that people love status. They're willing to play hours and hours and hours just to get their rating even a little bit higher. There's almost no prize money at chess.com. And yet the use numbers are fantastic. So that's an obvious test case and one that has impacted me. I've been a chess.com member forever. Beyond that, one more directly related to sports is something called Fantasy Premier League. And it's a game that was actually launched by the English Premier League itself. And it's a free-to-play game. And it was launched, I forget how many years ago. I want to say 10, 15 years ago. I should know this. I do know it. It just slips my mind right this second. But obviously, in a market in the UK where sports gambling has been pervasive for decades, there's a William Hill every corner. Here, people do have alternatives to actually bet, real money on the outcomes of English Premier League games, and yet we've seen Fantasy Premier League be an incredible success. They have now 11 million active players, and what this has done for the Premier League is those players now watch more content. They watch more of the games. They'll watch even games between lower level player teams because they might have a player on that team. They estimate that the viewership of their content just from having this game alone is up 4 to 5%. If you look at their sponsorship revenue that they get annually, a 4 to 5% viewership boost is worth over $200 million a year in extra value from launching this free-to-play game. They've done this while still having relationships with gambling companies. They still make some revenue, but they found out that this is actually more valuable for them than the revenue they were getting from gambling. So, for example, in the Premier League, teams have been able to have front of jersey gambling sponsors up until now. They're actually so excited about what Fantasy Premier League is doing, bringing extra viewers, bringing them extra marketing opportunities, et cetera, that they're actually banning front of jersey gambling ads on teams going forward because they don't need that revenue anymore. They actually have found a better way, and a way that also includes more people. I was actually just doing some teaching. I was actually teaching a group of talented high school students from all over the world. I was when this actually was happening in Dubai last week. And I asked them how many had a chess.com membership. I think over half of the students there had a chess.com membership. And I asked them how many played Fantasy Premier League. And these are, again, students from all over the world. I think like 40% of them played Fantasy Premier League. And these are really talented young people with great minds. They love this challenge. And so when you look at what I think SportsPredict can do, a huge part of our audience, I think, will be people like 12 to 18 who are locked out of gambling for obvious reasons, but really have a desire to show the world how smart they are and show that they're competitive and that they know what they're talking about and they know how to use data to make better predictions. They want a chance to be able to show that talent. And when I talked to them about SportsPredict, they were really excited about it. So this is why we think we have a bright future. Is you look at that audience of people, and they were very, very excited about it.
Yeah, it's interesting. And just what you were talking, so Fantasy Premier League founded in 2002. And this article is a few years old, but 11 million users around the world. So super cool for anyone that hasn't heard of that. So appreciate that.
Fun story about Fantasy Premier League, and it relates to chess as well, is in one season a couple of years ago, the world number one chess player, Magnus Carlsen, was on the leaderboard. He was in the top 10 in the world. And he couldn't stop talking about Fantasy Premier League. Like, here's the number one chess player in the world, like admired, and people were in awe of him. And yet, every interview, in fact, he changed his profile all the time to talk about how great he was at Fantasy Premier League. Which I think the point of that is, no matter how much people respect your intelligence and how much credit you get for that and how much adulation, there is no limit to how much of that we want. Here's someone who is at the extreme of being respected for his IQ, and he wants again to prove status. He wants another way to do that. To me, that's hilarious. The fact that he just loved how his performance in Fantasy Premier League was really important to him. It shows we all have that
That's cool.
desire.
Yeah, I mean, he's a top level, whatever you want to call it, chess player, athlete,
Yeah,
whatever, however you want to label it, right? Which I think it's an athlete, but yeah, they want to compete and be the best at everything. So it makes sense. Now, I'm sure this is a question swirling around listeners' heads. Prediction markets are super hot right
yeah,
now. How do you separate? How do you say you're different, right? I just know that's a question people are probably thinking, and I was like, yeah, I might not bring it up, but I was like, nah, like you got to, because I think it's like the obvious now of what you've explained, where everything's gone, how it's different from betting. You want to
yeah,
have this score. Now those have blown up, like Kalshi and Polymarket and some
yeah.
of these over the last couple of years. So if you want to touch on that, that's probably a good spot to go next.
Yeah. So first of all, I'd say I've been a fan and advocate for prediction markets for a long time. If you're, I have a hedge fund background, so I'm a finance guy. I believe in markets. I believe that markets are a good way to gain information and to price things. So I'm a big fan of prediction markets in general. Delighted and thrilled by the rise of poly markets and by Kelshi. I think that's really, really interesting. And there's a great place for people to compete on these markets and to have fun and to enjoy trading on them. I have nothing bad to say about what they're doing. That being said, there are lots of people who are under 18 or don't want to real risk real money, but still want to prove their status and prove that they're great at something. Um, and I'm happy with the success of Kelshi and Polymarkets. In fact, if anything, that's raised the profile of the idea that prediction is a real skill, that there is a way to get better at that. There have been people who have done real research on this, most notably Philip Tetlock, who's a professor at the University of Pennsylvania. He wrote a book called Super Forecasting that talks about how to become a better predictor. But there is a skill here. People like Robin Hanson at George Mason University has been talking about prediction markets and how they really help us understand reality and do better predictions than just what any expert possibly can. These are the fact that these concepts are entering the world and growing with the success of these companies. I think is fantastic. I just want to take that and broaden out the scope of it and let more people play. So our motto for SportsPredict is predicting sports is fun. Now everyone can play, and that's kind of. I'm happy that these other platforms are doing great. I'm supportive of them. I don't think but I think there are a lot of people that, for all kinds of reasons that we talked about, want to make predictions but don't want to do there. And I think our emphasis on creating a status event like Fantasy Premier League, like the rating in chess.com, is a slightly perspective. And I think that's a perspective that a lot of people will really enjoy.
Yeah, no, it's interesting to see the rise of those, and the now blurred lines between betting and
Yeah,
uh, just like see a national, and this goes outside of sports, but you see something happen, and then you see that there was a trader that placed a huge bet on something happening, and it's like interesting. Anyway, for a topic for a different day. So on Sports Predict, right, free to play, right, the Premier, like Fantasy Premier League, right, like they're launching that on the back of their league, and so monetization's a little different because it's engaging fans and yada yada yada. How do you think of Sports Predict then? What's sort of the Trojan horse? Is there a Trojan horse? What's the business model? How do you think about that?
perfect question. I couldn't have begged for a better question because that's exactly what I want to talk about today. Actually, I was really enjoyed your last interview, your last podcast with Chris Weil. He talked about how to create amazing live action sports events. So we have created some IP and filed patents on what we think could be an incredibly fun way to play Sports Predict in a live action format. So if you allow me to paint a little bit of a picture of what we hope to accomplish. We would love to find a sponsor for this idea. The idea is we want to create a contest that kind of takes some elements from Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, maybe some elements from Squid Game, and creates a live action contest where we get as many as 256 players in say a warehouse or a soundstage, making live predictions during a sporting event. And as you make predictions, if you get them wrong, you're eliminated. And eventually, player. So you start with 256 players. Each question we divide half people say yes, half the people say no. We have a way of designing that so that once side either yes or no gets to half, if you haven't answered yet, you have to choose the other one, and then you watch the outcome, and you're going cheering with your other people that have said all the yes are sitting on the green side of the room, the no people are sitting on the red side of the room. You make a prediction. Will there be any points scored in the first 5 minutes of the Super Bowl game? And you swipe right for yes, or you swipe left for no. You go cheer. You're in your sweat area where you're sweating the result. Once that's resolved, the people who are right survive. The people who are wrong get eliminated. And when you swipe right, your phone turns green. If this was like a Netflix level production, we would have people wearing LEDs and their whole body would turn green. And they would go sit in the green section. Once that resolves, we go down to 128. And then we do another question. It gets down to 64. We ask 4 questions in the first half. And by halftime, we're down from 256, we're down to 16. And now we have a 40-minute halftime. Those 16 people are going crazy. Social media is blowing up. And second half starts and we ask 4 more questions. We go from 16 to 8, 8 to 4, 4 to 2, and 2 to 1. Our goal would be to find a sponsor to offer $1 million prize for an event like this. And our pitch is for $1 million prize and for $1 million marketing budget, we think we could deliver $50 million in media value for this idea. And I think it takes the whole idea of the chance to win a big prize. It takes the idea of an elimination type format that we've seen successful in Squid Game and stuff like that does. But actually, there's an element here of real skill, of prediction, understanding what is it more likely or not that a team will score that there'll be a score in the first 5 minutes of the Super Bowl. There's some real elements of skill to this, and then watching the game and having the sweat. And I imagine, maybe I'm a sadist in some ways, but imagine we're down to the last 4 or last 2, and there's a huge twist at the end. You could call it the world's biggest bad beat. You can see that there could be some real interesting human drama around making your choices and then cheering for something that could be incredibly powerful. We're really excited about this concept, and we're already pitching this to a few people. We think that this would be, for me, with no insult to Mr. Beast, I just watched his latest contest with the 30 celebrities playing for $1 million for charity. I actually think this would be more fun to watch, in my view. I think this would be more interesting. The human drama of it would be more compelling. We'll have to see if we can convince the world of this, but I think we will. I think Chris Weil would be someone, obviously, I'd love to connect with on this. So maybe I'll see if maybe you can reach out to him if he would be happy to connect with you on this, because I think they would be an interesting partner, an amazing partner for this.
For sure. Yeah, and then for everyone listening, I actually have a few interesting things. I'll keep it off the public domain, so if you're listening, this is where the cool stuff happens behind the scenes, and join Profluence if you want deeper of that. But anyway, Steve, I want to go here as we sort of round it out. You obviously, we started this talking about even pickleball and how it's going to be huge in Asia, right? And you know the ins and outs of building a whole ecosystem, and one of the hardest things to build in anything is a sports league, right? There's so many different components. Asia's about to explode. Why go build this? Why go build on the tech side? Why go build SportsPredict when there's even an opportunity still in pickleball or in IP, right? And I guess the question's more why tech over IP from a general, and then also, you can sort of take it wherever you want to. It's interesting to see how people move from idea to idea within a sector.
For me, I just spent a week with these students in Dubai, amazing students from all over the world, and so talented. But I would say of all their skills, I think somewhere they were challenged is they weren't good at being able to be good predictors, being able to take data and actually make good predictions from them. That wasn't a skill set that was their best. Let's put it that way. No insult to anyone into that group of amazing students who I love being with, but this was something that they hadn't really engaged with, hadn't really thought about a lot. And to me, it's weird that we spend a year learning trigonometry. And frankly, in my life, I don't know the last time I took the sine of something, or the cosine. I don't think that's really that practical. But being able to understand odds and predictions is incredibly practical, whether it's for investing, whether it's for insurance, they estimate that U.S. companies spend $50 billion a year on various predictions. And people just really don't have a great skill set in this. Most people have not studied this for one day in their life. People like Professors Tetlock, Professors Hansen, who have really thought about this and have put ideas out to the world. But yet, not a lot of people are teaching this. And now, with the rise of Kelshi going from a $1 billion valuation to 10 or 12 or whatever, we're seeing that this is now becoming a real part of the American economy. It always was, but it's becoming more obvious that this skill set is incredibly valuable. In fact, I asked ChatGPT, what's the most invaluable skill set you would want to learn as a kid? It's making good decisions under uncertainty is the most valuable skill set it answered. That's literally what we're trying to help people get better at through SportsPredict. So when I look at the size of the mission and what we could accomplish in terms of perhaps 1 billion players, I talk about this being, in some ways, maybe the world's biggest talent search for data analytics talent if we're successful. I think we're also not just going to have contests, but we're also going to create lesson plans and content around a curriculum of how you can become a better predictor yourself. That we think is incredibly valuable and something that doesn't following. Obviously, we're standing on the shoulders of giants like Tetlock, like Nate Silver, like Robin Hansen, like Annie Duke. There's so many people who have really created some really great thoughts around this. But for, I'd say, most students in the world and most people in the world haven't really engaged with this at the highest level in a way that I think would be valuable. So when I look at the scope of the value of what I can create for the world, and also I'm just passionate about this. That's something I love competing. I love thinking about odds. I love having a rating. I love comparing my results to other people. This is something I will want to play with my family. And all these things I don't think work as well with gambling. So all the things I think would make this most joyful for a lot of people, I think SportsPredict is the best solution for it. So in terms of, I still love pickleball. I'm still involved in some ways. And I think there's still chances and opportunities there for sure. And be happy to share those thoughts at some other point with other people. But I think SportsPredict is something that could really scale into something that's, again, hopefully the biggest game in the world.
Yeah, that would be awesome. Question we ask everyone to round out, and we've touched on some of it. What do you see? And I know we've talked a lot about pickleball. We've talked a lot about what you're building. So I want to try to keep it, elsewhere. Like what else is interesting to you in sports happening right now? Where else would you go? Is there another sport that you think is hot and has a ton of growth potential? Is there a certain area, whether it's youth or college or pro? Like, is it something adjacent, like a, prediction market, like you into sports? Like where are some other things you see opportunity in having such a good scope across it now, building the league and now SportsPredict?
Yeah, my answer is going to be an answer that is almost cliche at this point, but nonetheless, it's cliche because it's true. Is what we see again and again. What makes sports successful is not just what's on the court or what's on the field. Is, can you tell a really great story? Can you get people interested in the players? Can you tell their stories? And again, I think that's something that Chris Weil was talking about in the podcast with him that I thought was fantastic. It's really creating those narratives. And an example of success in doing that, amazing success in doing that, was what Liberty Media has done since they bought Formula One, I think in 2015. Obviously, Drive to Survive was that, but just in general, but people don't, I think people underestimate the genius of what Liberty Media and the team have done with Formula One. In 2015, there were very few American Formula One fans. Very, very few people were watching it. And I wasn't the biggest fan, but I would watch races. But watching a race in 2015 versus watching a race today is a completely different experience in terms of viewership. First of all, a challenge in Formula One then, which has been somewhat reduced, but still exists, is that the person who gets the lead in the first lap often wins. Like sometimes, that was especially true in like the early 2010s. And so, but back then in the broadcast, they focused on who was going to win the race. And so a lot of times there just wasn't that much drama. If you watch a race today, they're really telling stories about, will Nico Hulkenberg get on the podium for the first time? It's about, will this team get in the top 10 today? And because they've told the player story, the driver stories, you care about whether that driver gets in the top 10. You care about more than just who wins the race. And that makes the whole race more engaging. Beyond that, they've also allowed you to hear the driver's communications between them and the pit. And they play that in near real time. They're showing, they're giving you access to that communication, which sometimes is pretty spicy and sometimes filled with anger or a lot of drama. Because you're driving a car 200 miles an hour and someone's in your ear telling you something you don't want to hear. You can see how you could maybe get a little spicy reaction to it. Just that inclusion into the inside of baseball, the inside of the brains of these drivers is amazing. How they've reshaped the narrative of, it's not just about who wins the race. That's certainly part of the story of the race, but there's a lot more narratives. There's a lot more things going on. And that's what every sport needs to think about, whether that's pickleball or other sport, is how can you create that depth of story? That means that every event that you do is exciting in one way, even if a driver is ahead by 20 seconds and they're going to win the race, it's still worth watching the race. And there's still some aspect to it that's interesting to you. That to me is the challenge for all sports leagues, and one that I think Liberty Media and Formula One has really been masterful of, and I think everyone has to learn from it.
Yeah, it's so cool. You just got me like smiling of just like how simple it is and how a normal viewer or fan or person is just like, oh, it's
Yeah.
cool now, but like what goes into these things and just like
Yes.
how hard it is to build and like to know it paid off and just building something from scratch is just what you obviously did with MLP, what you're doing now with Sports Predict. Like it's the coolest thing. And just the same with like a Liberty Media and F1. Like I just don't think enough
Yeah.
people step back. I think we should all take a step. It's easy to criticize the NBA or NFL or whatever it is. It's like you know how much goes into every little detail. It's so cool. It's incredible. So no, Steve, I think this is a great way to end it out. A great way to start the year. So really appreciate you coming on. If people want to get in contact with you, they're interested in Sports Predict. They're curious. They want to get their family to I'm a
Yeah.
Steelers fan. Let's hope we're winning in the playoffs this year. Like where can you get the
So
app? What's the details there?
we're on the App Store for Sports Predict. You can find us there, or you can also just do it through the web or through your mobile on your phone at sportspredict.com.
Awesome.
We're actually having a contest for the NFL right now with some small prizes for
Huh.
the NFL playoffs. So if you go to sportspredict.com, you'll see some of the markets we're making on the NFL games for the wild card weekend. Watch the space. I think we'll have some really big partners and ideas in 2026 that will help start to really launch this platform to get bigger and bigger. And appreciate being on. It's been a pleasure and a joy, and hopefully we'll keep in touch. And if people go to sportspredict.com, you can sign up right now.
Love it.